Hi everyone, I'm Liberty Doll, and this is Liberty Update. Cornell students passed a student-sponsored referendum this week to provide free tampons and menstrual pads in all campus bathrooms. 78.6% of the roughly 3,000 ballots voted yes. The measure will now go to the school's president for a final decision. If passed, the free products will be offered in both men's and women's bathrooms in order to account for the school's transgendered population. No voters cited the possible financial burden of supplying these products in every school bathroom, and noted they will probably go to waste in the men's room, as approximately only 1% of the student body's population identifies as trans. Critics also argued that the school shouldn't be subsidizing anything not directly related to education and probably shouldn't be subsidizing anything at all. Nonetheless, supporters claimed that free menstrual products are a basic human right, right up there with shelter and water, and not recognizing it as such is apparently insane and ridiculous. I hadn't heard of this specific human right before, so just to be sure, I read through the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I didn't actually see free tampons on there. But, maybe they just haven't updated their website yet. But they should probably get on that, or else the feminists over at Cornell are going to be pissed. I guess it's kind of understandable, as the UN was already pretty busy this week publishing a report that condemned the U.S. for human rights violations against the black community. The report accuses the U.S. of racial terrorism, unjust incarceration of blacks, and compared recent police shootings to lynching. The report claims that a pattern of state violence has led to a human rights crisis, which can easily be argued, as police have long since moved from protect and serve to a paramilitary law enforcement organization with no duty to protect. But the report suggests that the problem be solved with reparations to blacks in the forms of counseling, debt cancellation, financial support, and other such peace offerings. The report also requests that monuments be built, education opportunities offered, and suggests the U.S. pass another law to make sure that Americans recognize how horrible slavery and segregation were. The suggestion to lower mandatory minimum sentences and engage in actual criminal justice reform are halfway down on the list, along with suggestions on how to address cases of excessive force. Meanwhile, Alicia Garza, co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement, came out recently to also call police shootings a form of state violence and called for continued investigation into the viability of police-free communities. She suggests that police shootings and lack of accountability are no longer a case of a few bad apples, but are in fact evidence of a corrupt and corroded system. Charlotte police released footage of the Keith Lamont Scott shooting late last week, though neither of the videos offer much information and don't clarify whether or not Scott was actually holding a gun. While officers initially stated that they approached Scott because he was holding a gun, the Charlotte police chief told reporters at a press conference that Scott was approached for weed possession. This, coupled with the gun, made Scott a quote-unquote public safety risk. Footage was also released this week from a Louisiana case dating back to November of 2015 that left 6-year-old Jeremy Mardis dead and his father, Chris Few, wounded. The boy was sitting in the front passenger seat of Few's car when police attempted to serve him a warrant, though current news reports state that he did not actually have any warrants at the time. Few fled, ending up in a dead-end street. Officers claim that he tried to back out and hit them, which also turned out to be false. The beginning of the video is silent, but shows Few with his hands up and outside the vehicle. The sound cuts in the moment the shots are fired. A total of 18 shots were fired into the vehicle, with 5 of them hitting Mardis. Few was unarmed, and police state that they did not know a child was in the car. The footage was released after the pretrial hearing this Wednesday. Both officers involved are being charged with the murder of Mardis and attempted murder of Few. Their trials are set for November 28th and March 13th. Both officers have a history of complaints against them, including both excessive force and 2 counts of rape, one of which involved a 15-year-old girl. It was revealed this week that the Cascade Mall shooter, who shot and killed 5 people late last week, was not only turned away by a gun shop hours before the shooting, but was also a federally banned person due to several domestic charges he'd racked up earlier and had been banned from owning any guns since last December. A Seattle Times editorial, like many people before, is using this tragedy as a call to arms for more gun control. The article claims that the common thread in all mass shootings is the guns themselves, and damn it, they must be stopped. By voting yes on a bill that would issue court orders to stop people from owning guns. The writers admit that such a law might not have stopped this particular shooting because the shooter already had a court order against him, but golly, it probably would have stopped all the other ones. Now, to review, the Cascade Mall shooter got his guns illegally and even went to a gun store 2 hours earlier inquiring on how to get a gun illegally without a background check. The clerk turned him away and called the police, who have, in fact, confirmed this story. Ultimately, the shooter acted like a criminal and stole a gun from his stepfather. If voted in, Initiative 1491 would allow anyone who had lived with a gun owner in the previous year to file a court order stripping them of their firearms. The order would only be able to be fought after the guns were taken and only at a legal hearing held sometime in the next 14 days. Now, you would think that if someone was deemed dangerous, some sort of action would be taken against them, rather than just having their guns removed. In the mental health world, most states require that mental health workers observe tear-off laws, which means that if someone makes a serious threat against another person, they immediately need to be reported to the police, transported to a hospital for evaluation, and the potential victim needs to be warned of the threat. Now, you would think that if someone was deemed that much of a threat so as to have their guns and rights taken, that there would be some kind of active threat, or the person would be evaluated in some way, rather than just left alone on their doorstep for up to 14 days. I mean, if the order does nothing other than take their guns, and they're worried enough to take them, they don't seem to be worried enough to actually take any other preventative actions, because anyone that's hell-bent on doing harm will do so regardless of weapons of choice. Also, a story of true heroism this week. A University of Michigan student has taken advantage of the school's designated personal pronoun policy to request to be referred to as His Majesty. The school has implemented a new policy whereby students can input their own personal pronouns into their online student accounts, which will then be automatically populated into all of the class rosters. Meaning, at the start of every semester, professors will be getting lists of students with their personal pronouns next to every name. The student, Grant Strobel, states that he takes no issue with schools looking to refer to students in the way that they prefer, and even likes it to someone calling another person by their preferred nickname, like Nick or Joe. His issue is that the school is institutionalizing the use of what he calls arbitrary pronouns and might actually punish anyone on campus who refers to someone with a different pronoun, even if it's accidental. A daily readership of 500,000 and a Sunday audience of 900,000 states that the Libertarian ticket is not a squandered vote, but instead a vote for principle, and even if he doesn't win, will send a message. Johnson also got an endorsement from Jeb Bush this week, though not officially. During a private luncheon held by the Manhattan Institute on the topic of education reform, Bush suggested that undecided voters vote for Johnson and even made a joke that Johnson would win the election and would be calling him after the win. Attendees claim that he called Johnson president several times during the event. A spokesperson for Bush did not confirm this story but also did not deny it and stated that it was in line with things that he had said in the past about not being able to support either Hillary or Trump. Obama would disagree with this endorsement, as he told listeners that a third-party vote would be a vote for Trump while speaking on a radio interview Wednesday morning. He further suggested that voting for Johnson would not only give the election to Trump, but would ruin all 8 years of Obama's presidency. Bernie Sanders, of all people, also jumped on this bandwagon, saying the country is in too much of a crisis for a protest vote. He instead is encouraging Americans to, quote, look at which candidate will work best for the middle class and working families. How about that revolution? Johnson also had the pleasure of being attacked by Nancy Pelosi recently, with Pelosi saying people only like Johnson because, quote, they like his hairstyle or whatever, and accusing him of wanting to take away clean air, which is a super intelligent and concise argument. Of course, Johnson had what he is calling another Aleppo moment this week, which, if you have television and social media, you probably already know. In an interview with Chris Matthews, he was asked to name a world leader he respects and admires. A good libertarian answer would have been something about how politicians and world leaders are not necessarily people to admire, especially when Matthews specified that this leader still had to be alive and active today. Instead, he stumbled around and said that he was having an Aleppo moment. In response, Jill Stein tried to pick on Johnson, Politico picked on Jill Stein, and Johnson found himself trending on Facebook. Johnson also got attention on the Jimmy Kimmel Show this week. Jimmy's crew went out into the streets and asked people if they knew who Gary Johnson was. All of them said no, except for in the final clip where a man responded that Johnson is the Libertarian candidate for president. The segment ended with a clip of Johnson himself saying, "Just Google Gary Johnson and find out." For those looking for a third-party candidate and unimpressed with Johnson, former Libertarian Party candidate Darrell Perry of New Hampshire has announced he is an official write-in candidate in 17 states. In his press release, he states that this gives him access to a potential 114 electoral votes. However, he will not be doing any actual campaigning to obtain this end. A list of the states in which he is an official write-in candidate can be found on his website. That is the conclusion of your Liberty-related news for the week. Thanks for tuning in to my third episode. Please like, subscribe, and share. Again, thanks for watching.